Hey guys, so this is my first live stream. So I'm going to be building a CRUD application using this library called Sembast, which I've never used before. I figured I'd take the time to kind of show you guys how I learn some of these technologies, because a lot of you guys have asked that on my previous videos. This is my first live stream, by the way, so if this is a bit amateur, that would be why. So I've set up a GitHub repository here, and I'll link it in the chat. You guys can go and follow along. I'll be updating it throughout the live stream as I do stuff. And yeah, I guess let's get started. So I'm going to jump into Semi-Blast here. I've got it open on the pub repository. I'm going to take a look at their GitHub and take a look at some of the examples. Alrighty, so it looks like they've got examples here. Do they have anything Flutter based? No. So I guess we'll have to look ourselves. Let's see. Here's something. Alright, so looks like this is the database. So, okay, they're doing singleton stuff. That's sort of like the SQL flight stuff that we've done in the past. Let's see. They've got this little finder object. Looks like that's how they actually locate the different records in the database. And all right, let's take a look at their models. So, okay. So it looks like they store the data in maps. So this is sort of like making a Firestore type application, because everything's being converted into a map and then being put into the database. All right, so I think I've got a good sense of what's going on here, and we'll refer back to this if we need to. Let's get into the editor. So I went and generated this. It's just the basic Flutter application. I'm just going to clean it up right now so that we can get started coding. So let's go and delete all of this. And then all of this. And this stuff here too. Then let's change this to a stateless widget. Add a build function. And get rid of these comments. All right, we're good to go. I'm looking at this stream. Looks like 13 of you are watching. No one's really talking though. Feel free to ask some questions if you have any. Oh, hey Leonardo, how you doing? All right. So while you guys are thinking up some questions, let's just build out the model here. So in our lib folder, let's build a new folder called model, or models rather, and then let's create our model.dart file. And I'm thinking that the application here, we're just doing CRUD, so let's just do basic text-based CRUD. So it'll just be a very basic example in that regard, but you should be able to apply these concepts to really anything. Okay, so let's call these, I guess we'll call them notes. So class note. And our class note will have an ID, and then we're going to have a final string of body. And then, of course, we need a constructor. And this.body, this.id. All right. I'm not sure how much it costs to publish an app to the Apple Store. They have a fee that you pay when you initially join the App Store. It's kind of a pain, but it's the same with Android. I think Apple's more expensive than Android, but it's been a while since I've checked. All right, so now we need a from map and to map function for this particular class so that we can put it into the database and get it out of the database. So I'm just going to make a named constructor, take in a map with a string and then a dynamic type, and I spelled dynamic wrong. Jesus. Where's my auto completion? There we go. And we'll just call this map. So then this.body equals map body. And I guess we don't really need to put in the ID. So now let's extract it. Oh, we just have the one key right now. Probably add some more later. And yeah, that should be good enough for now. So let's go ahead and create the database stuff. So create a new folder called database. And all right, we're gonna need like a database file. Whoops. So database.dart. Oh, and I actually completely forgot to import Sembast. So let's get those dependencies. That was kind of silly. So we're going to need Sembast. We're also going to need like path provider, I believe. And I'll grab these off of Deb. I'm doing this on my browser. I guess I could show it to you guys. Hang on. Sembast is a NoSQL database. And Blackso, I'm doing all right. Hopefully I didn't butcher your name. How are you? All right, so what else do we need? Just path provider and Sembast, I think. I think that's all we really need. All right, so I'm just going to save that, get the dependencies with the plugin. And I think I'm going to probably build a block for this application, but I'm not going to use those libraries. So I'll just use my old provider, and I'll show you that here in a moment. All right, so let's create our database. So let's just call it NoteDB, because I think Sembast has a DB object. And I've actually got, let's see, let me switch over to the browser real quick. So I've actually got, let's see, in here, this movie searcher with, I believe it had SQL Flight in it. Yeah, so we've got a nice little implementation here that is creating a singleton object for the database, and I think we could use this as sort of a piece of code that we could use to essentially apply to Sembast. All right, so basically just follow the singleton pattern here. Let's grab all of this. And of course, we're going to have to change all of it as well. So, and actually, this is not going to be a movie database. Let's see. Let's bring in our imports as well. So I think it's Sembast, and there's also Sembast input output. And path provider. And of course, we'll need our model. It's called model.dart. There we go. All right. So I guess let's start with our initDB function down here. I'm going to have to change all of this. It is still going to be a future returning a database type. The database type, I think, is what we're getting out of this Sembast package. Let's see. Yeah. So that's from Sembast. So let's get the document dir. Using path provider, and then let's make our DB path. So join documents directory dot path, and then we need to name the DB. We'll call it note DB. And then we're going to need to use this database factory IO thing to just open the database for us and pass in our DB path. All right. Why is join giving us an error? Oh. That's very strange. All right, well, I guess we'll have to change this. Let's go ahead and change all this as well. So we're going to need a getter to get the instance, and this will grab our singleton, and then we're going to need the singleton. Just point this to our constructor. And then we have our database. So this should actually, I believe, this should just be pointing towards our database. Like that. So we actually don't need a return, but let me check for a second. Why is this throwing an error? I guess it doesn't need to be static. No? All right, let's, I'm going to restart here, rebuild this from scratch. I'm not going to follow that other pattern. That was just too confusing. So let's start with a simple close constructor. Then we'll build our notedb, get the instance, singleton, static, final notedb. Good old live coding. And this should be internal. like that. And then our database, so static database, DB, I think is what we should call it. And actually, this should be private. And then let's set up the initDB function again. For some reason my keyboard keeps typing double characters. Wait a second, why am I doing this all backwards? Yeah, I forgot to join here. So db path is join documents dir. We're going to call this node.db. Again, I don't know why join is throwing an error. Very strange. Oh, that's right. We need a sync. I think. No, that's not it. But we still do need async. Oh, we need path. Jeez. No wonder. Alright, sorry guys. It was a little silly moment here. So then why is this throwing an error? App documents directory. Oh, the path, not the actual. There we go. All right. So now let's get the database. Final database. Jeez, I can't type today. Factory.io, open database, and then we just put in our DB path. Like that. Alrighty. Well, that was a lot more complicated than it needed to be. Alright, let me check the chat real quick. I'm not really sure what you guys have been saying. So you want a non-trivial example on scoped model? I do have some examples with authentication that I'm going to do. I'm not sure if I want to go back to scoped model though. Let's see. Internal is not a built-in function. I'm just naming a private constructor internal because I'm just using it to get a singleton object of the actual class that we're inside of. And then the Visual Studio Code theme that I'm using is just the Spacemax Dark theme. And thanks. So yeah, just Spacemax Dark with Fura code, and the code ligatures are enabled. All right, so where were we? Let me quickly go back and check real quick. All right, so we need to create a getter for the database. And we'll just check db is not equal to null. And we'll return the db because we only need the one db. So, and then db equals await initDB, and I forgot to actually return the database from the initDB function here. So let's just add a return statement like that. All right, and that should be good for the singleton. So now when we call this and we get the database, it should just get the same object. So should connect for the first time, and then every other time we get the same object back. And then we don't have multiple database instances causing memory issues. All right, so now I guess we should build some logic. So I'm going to put that in another file. And I guess we'll call this like crud.dart. We'll probably need Sembast. Oh god, I keep mispronouncing it. We'll probably need our database. And we'll most likely need our model. So let's call this DB logic. And we need to name our database. So let's create a constant string called store. I'll just call this notes. What are the cons of scoped model? I'd just say the biggest con of scoped model is that it's not really updated. Scoped model was originally pulled directly from the Fuchsia GitHub repository, so it's like something that hasn't been updated in a long time. So when you use it, you're kind of using it as is. So until they release Fuchsia, I don't really see much development pressure on the back of scoped model. So for now, I just think it's kind of a cool novel thing that you can play around with, but for the most part, it's not really great for larger state applications. All right, so let's create our store now. So just call this notes, and we're going to use int map store factory. And so the way this works is, at least from what I'm understanding, is with Sembast, they take and they create like a big map, and it's actually a map of maps. So each of your records of each of the objects is converted into a map, and then it's put into this integer-based database. And then the key for each of the database is just a normal integer. And we'll use that as like the ID of the actual node. So just create the store like this. And then we can create a getter. So and we want to point this at our node DB. Oops, this should be a wait. I think it's just DB. No, that's not it. Yeah, it needs to be the instance. There we go. So that gets us our database, and now we can do some stuff with the database. So let's create some CRUD operations. So first let's start with insert. We'll take a note and pass it in here. And I guess we just do await notes. And there's an add operation. We have to add in the client. Can I just pass in DB, or do I have to wait on it? I think. Yeah, it's future. And then I guess we just take our note and convert it into a map. Yeah, there we go. That's pretty simple. So yeah, this is very similar to like Firestore, except it's all on your device rather than online. So I feel like this database would be really good for caching stuff in a Firebase application. Oh wow, I've gotten some donations here. That's kind of crazy. So Helg, am I saying that right? Helg donated 200 NOK. I'm not sure what currency that is. And he says, my videos have been tremendously helpful for the past few weeks. Keep it up, dude. With a heart. Thank you. And then Matthew donated $1. And I'm not even going to try to say your last name because that is very complicated for me. And I thank you, Matthew. So Helg says that it's around 25 USD. So thank you very much, guys. That's really unexpected. Yeah, I knew it was Norwegian, but I didn't know it was Krone. All right. It rhymes with quiet. Okay. Matthew Client, is that it? Did I say it right, or did I butcher it? Probably butchered it. Apparently there's a latency that I'm not used to on the stream, so let's build a update function while we're waiting for some more replies. So update is going to be a little bit more complicated, I'm thinking. So we saw before in that example that they were using these finder objects. So I'm thinking that we need to use these finder objects. So looks like use a filter. Now what's the filter here? So this takes in a filter object. And what do we have? So we can filter, it looks like by quite a lot of things. So let's filter by key. And we can just use our note ID to do this. And this is how we can look through our database and get the appropriate note. So let's then again await notes delete. And then we have to pass in our client. So await DB like we did up top. And then I guess we put in the finder like this. Is that right? Yeah, that looks right to me. Okay, that's pretty easy. Well, actually, we'll see when we actually run this thing. So, but it looks to be all right now. Oh, you said so apparently I did say your name correctly. That's interesting. Are you talking about Dart? You can just use the throw keyword if you want to throw an error. So you could have like an if statement, like if you select the items properly from the API, then you just get the stuff and you return it. Otherwise, you could just say throw and then throw the error you want to throw. I don't really have a good example of that. Maybe in the future I'll try to add more errors to my applications. All right, so I guess now let's do a delete function. All right, so we're also going to be passing in a note here. And I guess we're also going to need another finder. And actually, our update function is our delete function because I put in delete instead of update. So this needs to be update. And let's see. All right, so yeah, that's what I screwed up. So we need to pass in the note that we're updating. That's the difference. So I can actually just copy this, change this to delete, and then take the note out of there. And now we've got both update and delete. Yeah, Blake's, I just caught that. Yeah, semi-blast is semi-bast is a bit like Firebase. It's all like maps, so maps and maps and maps inside of this database, which is kind of cool. I just kind of ran into it the other day and I just wanted to try it out. I figured it'd be a good first live stream thing. All right, so now we need a read function. We need to be able to read all the notes from the database so that we can then put them in like a list view or something. So let's create that. List of note. We'll just call it get all notes. All right, so I guess we just call this snapshot. get our notes store reference, call find, away DB, and let's see, is that all we need to pass into find? So if we don't put in a finder, then it gets all of the records. Okay, I'm cool with that. And then I guess we can say return snapshot. And I think this is a big old list of records. So we want to map over this. And each of these will be a map, I think. So final note equals note from map. And we can pass in our map like that, and that will give us back a note object. And then we can just say note ID equals snapshot, and let's see. Or not snapshot, map. And there should be like a, yeah, there, key. Perfect. And then let's just return the note. And then this needs to be converted to a list. And why is it throwing an error? Argument type can be accessed to map. That doesn't seem right. Let's see. So find returns this big old future list of record snapshot with the int and map inside of it. Okay. Then with snapshot, that's a list of record snapshot int map, blah, blah, blah. We map over it. Get back a record snapshot. All right, so we need to do something with the map. So map.value, there we go, perfect. Okay, so I think we've got all of our CRUD operations. So we've got insert, update, delete, and get all. And I guess we could create a delete all. And if the delete function is anything like the find function, then we can just call delete without passing in a finder, and it should just delete everything. We can actually, we can actually check all of that out if we want to. Delete all if no finder. All right, perfect. So let's just do that then. Call this delete all. Just remove the finder. And we don't have to pass in a note. And then just take that out. There we go. That's perfect. All right, so let's commit all of this to GitHub so you guys can take a look. So I'll just call this database. And then, yeah, stage all the changes, blah, 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 blah. Push 2. And now you guys can take a look at this code. I think it should be all right for now. Of course, we have no actual front end. But we're about to remedy that. So actually, first we need to create the block, and I'm going to go get my provider from my other tutorial. So let's actually create the block folder first, and then provider.dart, and then we'll go back over to the browser here. All right, so let's see. My repositories, and I think it's what, the Utopian Rocks app. Yeah, the demo, and then it's like patch 1, and then it's in the blocks folder. Yeah, base provider. So this is just a generic block provider that I wrote for this application, and I'm just going to use it for the application that we're writing right now. Just save a bit of time instead of writing my own or using a library. It's actually fairly simple. If you guys want to know more information about it, I recommend going to look at the actual tutorial with this in it, because I'm not really going to explain it right now. Well, thank you, Matthew. That's a great compliment. Shared preferences is all right. I wouldn't say it's unreliable. It depends on how you're storing things, really, because you're storing things in a temporary fashion, though. I've used it with a few applications for authentication, and I've never really had a problem. You don't really want to store a huge amount of data, or like data that's not pertinent, say, to the client. So like if it's just the client's login information, then it's not a problem. But if it's like login information for like your entire app or something that's like encrypted, then you definitely don't want to store it in shared prefs. All right, so now let's create the block. We'll call this note block. And I guess we'll just create a normal block, so not block, note block. We're gonna need, let's see, we'll probably need Dart async. We'll probably need our model. Definitely need the logic that we just created. What did we put that in? CRUD? Yeah. All right. So let's get that, what did we call it? DB logic, I think. Yeah. Just call it our logic. And then we'll create a constructor here. We'll pass in that logic object so that we can access it in the block. And so for the block, because we're going to be doing updates and deleting, we're going to need a stream sync that receives data from the front end, and we're also going to need one that's passing data back to the front end. So we're going to need two of them. We're going to need a stream controller. If I could spell, with a list of notes in it. This is for returning back all of the notes when we actually call get all notes. And why is this throwing an error? Oh, yeah. Okay, whatever. We'll call this notes, and we need to set it equal to a stream controller of a probably broadcast type, I'd suspect. And then we'll have a stream controller of type note. We'll call this incoming. Though that's probably a bad, no, it's fine. So basically what's going to happen is we send notes from the UI through this one, and then we send back our updates through this one. So we can create some getters here. So a stream list of note. Let's just call this outgoing. And then I guess stream sync is what we need for this one. We'll call this in sync. All right, perfect. And then I guess inside of the constructor we need to go incoming stream listen. So we're listening to all of the events that are coming in from the user interface. And these are all the notes that are coming in from the user interface. And we're actually going to need a way to differentiate between the different events. And we're probably going to need to put these inside of the actual note model. So let's go and build that right now. So I'm going to create an enumeration. And let's call this I guess note state would be fine. So enum. This is going to be sort of like a Redux actions, I guess. Yeah, so we'll have one called get all, then insert, then update, delete, delete all, and then I guess no op. Let's make it all uppercase. And then down in our note, we can put it with the ID. So just add a note state, which we'll just call state. Add it to the constructor as well. And then I guess we should probably pass it into the database too. I guess we could pass it in as an integer. So let's see. So this dot state equals note state dot values, and then we just pass in map of state like that. And wait, why is this throwing an error? Values isn't a function. Yeah, I know it's not a function. Oh right, I have to pass it in like a map because it is a map. And so that should essentially replace an integer with one of these enumerations. And then we can do the same over here. We can do the reverse rather. So we could just say state is state index. So it gets the index of the enum, and then it just puts it in as an integer. All right, so what's this question you're asking, Sedam? You said, what would you advise for social complex media app state management? Really, state management, it really, like once you've done a few applications, you really understand that like the choice doesn't really matter. Frankly, block is the easiest to understand. Redux is a little bit verbose. I'm going to make a tutorial soon on MobX, which is kind of cool. It's a lot like Redux, but with less moving pieces, and it's much easier to write. But you could also use like a basic inherited widget, or even just a stateful widget. Like that would be more than enough. All right, let's get back to this real quick. So I'm actually thinking that we're going to need like a copy with function. And the main reason why I think this is because we're going to be passing mainly notes that have nothing inside of them, but that have these like state pieces in them back to the database logic. And that might throw some kind of weird error. So I think we're going to need to be able to just like modify our notes as we're like passing them along. So let's just like do that real quick. So copy with, and then we can just pass in some the body, and then a note state, and then I guess an ID, and then we'll return a note where body is either the body or this dot body. And then state is the state or this dot state, and then ID is the ID, this dot ID, like that. And let's put a comma here so it looks easy to read. And why is this throwing an error? Notes state, not note state. Okay. Let's add all this to the GitHub. Yeah. Just do it. I should probably stage them before, but I don't really care. And I'll push them up to the GitHub repository. You guys can check it out. All right, so now we get the state in here. We can actually build the block logic. So basically, like Redux, we're just going to be checking the state of each of these notes that we're passing through and seeing what that state is and then calling the appropriate functions. So let's see. I guess we would go with a switch statement, and then we can just do note.state like this. And this should be note, not notes, because we're passing in a single note through the stream. So now we need to make cases for each of our notes state. So let's start with insert, and then case note state. We're going to need update, actually there might be, yeah, add all missing cases. There we go. That's much easier. Perfect. All right. So we need cases for each of these: insert, update, get all, delete, delete all, and no op. And no op, we're not going to do anything, so we'll just leave that alone. But the others, we have to do something. Let's remove these and add some breaks here. So for insert, we're basically just going to go and take our logic and then call the insert method with the note. Then, because we're going to get back a future, we want to take that future, and we're not going to use the value. We're just going to say, and actually this should be asynchronous, notes.add await logic.get all notes. And essentially what I'm doing here is I'm just inserting the note into the database, and then I am having it call the get all notes function immediately afterwards to update everything that's on the screen. And basically want to do that with all of the operations except for get all. So with get all, we're actually getting all the notes, and we don't want it to happen twice. So for update, I guess it's basically the same thing. So let's just copy this over and then just replace insert with update. Then I guess we can just repeat this for delete. And then with delete all, we also don't need to do, well, we don't need to pass in the note. We just need to, yeah, like that. So then get all, the only real difference here is that we're just calling notes add await logic get all notes. All right. So let me go through this once more so you guys understand what I just did. Kind of mumbled my way through it, but basically we're taking the note, we're passing it through this little switch statement, and we're trying to see what the state is based on the enumeration that we created. And logic is, of course, the logic that we created for the database. So we're calling those methods. So insert the note, then take, whatever the result of that is. We don't really care what the result is. And then we're going to use our notes stream controller, the actual sync that's attached to this stream controller. And then we're going to pass in await logic get all notes, which will then update this new stream controller with all of the new notes in the big old list. And of course, we're doing that for all of the operations. So it's actually a lot more simple than it looks, of course, but yeah. And we don't actually necessarily have to do it this way. We could actually call get all on the render or the build function of one of our widgets to re-render everything every single time it updates. But I like it this way a little bit more because the logic is in the background. We need to create a dispose function, by the way. So let's add incoming and then notes and close it too. All right, so what are you guys saying? I agree. I agree with you, Saddam. I think a good authentication tutorial is in order, and I definitely will be doing something on authentication in the near future. Environment variables in Flutter. You can put them directly into your PubSpec YAML. There's a whole bunch of different metadata tags that you can add to a PubSpec YAML to change the different production environments. The parentheses matcher expression? Are you talking about the parentheses that I'm using right here, where it's just parentheses with an underscore? That's just an anonymous function that I'm putting in here, and I'm putting the underscore here because I don't care about the input variable. Or is that not what you're asking? Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, it's an extension. I think it's called Rainbow. I think Rainbow. Let's see. Yeah, indent brackets is one of them, but I actually thought I had rainbow brackets, but apparently not. So let's find it. I have a ton of extensions on here. I have one called bracket pair colorizer and then rainbow brackets. So those are the two that are really doing all this colors. So you see these like indent colors. I think those are coming from, I think it's the indent colorizer. It's another one. And then I've got all of the other colors coming from these two. So I think you'll only really need one of them. I don't know why I have two of them. I'll have to look into that later. All right, let's go ahead and build our actual application now. So let's start with the home page. So I think what I'm going to do here is just use tabs instead of just pages. I mean, it really doesn't matter though. So I guess we need to put the block in first. So let's come up here to the root widget and put it up here in the material app. So let's wrap this and block provider, and actually we need to import it. And we need the provider. And we're gonna need model. No, models. We're also going to need our logic. Keep typing in logic, but it's actually under database. And it's under CRUD. I should probably have named it logic, but whatever. I don't really care at this point. All right. So it's a block provider of type note block, I think is what I called it. And then we need to add the builder, which will take in the build context, which we don't care about, so underscore, and then the note block, which we do care about. Check to see if that's null or not. Then we can take the note block and just directly pass in our logic, which I think we called what, DB logic? Yeah. And then I guess we need our onDispose function. So again, block, and then just block.dispose like that. Perfect. And yeah, put some commas there to make it more vertical instead of horizontal. All right, so let's see. I think for home, what we're going to need to do is wrap this My Home Page widget inside of a tab controller. So let's do that. Oh, whoops, didn't mean to do that. So let's say wrap in new widget, default tab controller. And we're going to have two tabs, one for the form where we're actually putting in the note, and we'll have our child of my home page. And then the other one for, of course, the view page, which is the home page or whatever. I think the home page we'll just use as like a skeleton, and then we'll have two actual screens. So then down here in the my home page, let's get our block. So we just call provider of context, and we want to make sure to pass in note block into the parameterized literal, and this should be a lowercase l. And then I guess we'll build out our scaffold. And we're going to put the tab bar, I guess, in the app bar instead of the bottom sheet. Wait. Sorry. My cat's getting in the way. One sec, guys. Alright, so title, let's just call this notes CRUD. And then we'll add the bottom here, tab bar, tabs. And we need to create two tabs in here, I think. And we'll add our icons. Derp. I'm derping around here. Man, I don't know how to spell. Alright, so I'm going to use icon info for the first one, and then I'll just call this the node page. So this will be our list view page, and then for the second one, let's just grab this, copy it over. Let's use like, let's see, what have we got? Text fields maybe? No, text format, yeah, that'll work. We'll use that as like the form, so input form, or maybe there's like an input icon, I don't know. Input. Yeah, that might actually be better. Alright, so now we just need to create the body, which is just a tab bar view, and give it some children, and we'll create two tabs. One will be called the info tab, and then the other one will be called a form tab, and that should be capitalized. And we'll pass the block into both of them. Alright, let's actually create these widgets. And I think we'll probably need to, well, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe we'll need to make these into stateful widgets, but I'm not sure. Let's just start with stateless and then we'll go from there. Alrighty. So let's make the bare minimum view here, and actually we need to add the block here. So final note block, and then pass it into the constructor. And do the same down here. So yeah, what I was going to say is let's build the bare minimum UI for now, and then we can style it after. So just build something basic so that we can kind of see our data after all this code. So I guess with the, let's start with the info tab. So it's just a matter of creating a stream builder. Stream builder. And then I guess stream with widget dot with block dot outgoing. And that'll be the stream, and then the builder pass in the context, and then the snapshot. Jeez, I can't type today. And then I guess we'll just say if snapshot has data, and we want to check to see if it doesn't have data actually, and then we'll return a circular progress indicator, make it look like it's loading, and then we'll just return a list view. And this won't be a list view builder, just a normal list view, because we want to add, I think, a button to the bottom so that we can like delete everything. So yeah, basically list view, and then what we can do is children can be like a snapshot.data.map. So we'll map over our snapshot, and then for each note in the snapshot, we'll create a list tile. And for now, we'll just have the title, which will be the note.body inside of it. And then I guess we're gonna need to convert this back to a list. Let's see. Hang on, this is sort of weird. I don't know why it's not throwing an error. Well, I guess it's fine. I guess for some reason map is not giving us a why is this not even showing us the code completion? Hang on, I may have to restart Visual Studio Code. Seems like it's not giving us the proper code completion. Or not code completion, but data. Wow, you guys are pretty quiet. Oh, okay. I went to college actually as a chemical engineer, Saddam. I picked up programming. Originally I was self-taught, but I did learn it in college as well. I have a master's in chemical engineering. So yeah. I mean, I guess you could say I'm kind of self-taught in the sense that you know, a lot of these programming languages, of course, I've had to learn on my own or learn through employers, and you know, yeah. And since I'm actually a freelancer, so I'm a contract programmer. I tend to work with various companies, and I go to the companies and I teach them various different technologies, sort of like what I do on my channel, and then I also help them implement things and actually do the coding myself. So yeah, I actually do have to learn some of this stuff. Is it better to be a programmer where I am? I don't know. I honestly don't know what it's like to be a programmer where you are. But I can say that I enjoy being a programmer. I could also say that knowing some of my colleagues, some of these jobs are pretty hellish. I can say that for sure. There are people who just plug in Java every day, all day, and they just hate their lives. But you know, it really depends on the type of programming you're doing, I think. Hey, Austin, it's good to see you. And thanks for the compliment, by the way. Alrighty, so I think I'm going to have to restart Visual Studio Code, so I'm going to quickly switch the screen to this. Sorry guys. I should probably make a screen for if there's a technical failure like this. And alright, flip back to VS Code and let's zoom back in. Let me know if this isn't readable or big enough for you guys. Alright, so let's see. Now is this working? It says it's loading, so that's a little better. Let's give it a moment. Sometimes the Dart virtual machine can take a little while to actually boot up. And while we're doing that, okay, there we go. Finally, looks like it's actually loaded up. So I don't know why it's not telling me that I need to convert this into a list, but for whatever reason, it's telling me that I don't have to do that. So you know what? I'm actually going to go ahead and build this application. And open up the actual emulator. You like Android Studio more? I like Visual Studio Code more because it's much more lightweight. Though, I mean, I do agree with you. Sometimes the consistency can be an issue, but it tends to be a little iffy. I actually prefer Emacs when I'm working on my own personal projects. But because, you know, you guys are watching, I have to use something that's a little bit more friendly, or, you know, I want to use something that's a little bit more friendly. And it actually just occurred to me that I didn't create a window for the actual whatchamacallit, for the emulator. So I have to do that on the fly right now, so just bear with me, guys. I know this stream is sort of amateur hour at the moment, but it is my first stream after all. Let's call this emulator. There we go. And let's drag it in here. There we go. I'm going to put this. Will it let me? I'm going to move it around. If it'll let me. Put this over here. Is that cool, guys? Is that in the way? All right. Let's lock all that down. Cool. All right. And let's get rid of this. All right, so it's still building. Be a little bit of a pain in that regard. And while we're doing this, actually, let's build out the form, because we do need a way to actually input the notes. Otherwise, we're going to have no data in here. So, and actually, because this is going to need a form, we are going to need to change this into a stateless widget, or stateful widget rather, like I suspected. So let's just do that real quick. So for this, we're going to need a text editing controller. Let's just call it controller, and then I guess we'll need init state. Set that equal to a new text editing controller, and then in here, what we'll do is just create a new form with a child that's a column. And then this will have children. Actually, it doesn't need to have children. Let's just make this a text form. Actually, you know what? No, let's make it a column. We'll have a single text form field in here, and then we can like push it to the top of the screen. It'll look fine with inside of a column. So controller, put that in here, and then we'll have an on field submitted function. Take that text, Stupid window. All right, take the text and we want to go widget.block.inSync, which is our incoming sync. So we're adding the items to this incoming sync, and we want to add the note type, put in the body, which is this text that we're passing in, and we want to put in state, which is the state that we just created, the notes state, and this is insert. So when we pass this through, this will go into our sync in the block, and then it will automatically update on the other page. And actually, we're going to need like a set state call here to clear out the box. So controller.clear, like that. And we don't need to wrap this in set state because the data doesn't show up on this tab. It shows up on the other tab. If it did show up on this tab, we may have to wrap this entire thing in set state. But as it is now, it should be all right. And yeah, we're getting an error here, so let's debug that real quick. And I'm suspecting that it probably has something to do with the map function and it not being a list of widgets. So let's take a look. And let's make this bigger for you guys. Wow, these errors are a little bit long, but let's see. Build function return null. That was probably when I first started it. Let's restart this and see what error it gives us. Oh, there we go. Wow, that's a big circular progress indicator. And these two tabs are actually reversed. So the first one is supposed to be the text form field. This one here, oh, no wonder. I flipped the two names. So let's whatever. I'm just gonna flip these two, and then I'll change the logic in post or something. All right. So in the input form, I'll put something in here like test. Submit it. And let's see. Does this show up? No, it doesn't. And that's because we don't have an initial call to the block to get the stuff from the database. So again, we're going to need to change this into a stateful widget. So let's do that. And then what we can do here is create an init state function. And then just in the init state function, this is going to throw a huge error, by the way. Let me reset it real quick. Anyway, in the init state function, we can just call widget block and pass something into the sync, like a note with a state for get all, so that it will actually get all of the items. So widget.block in sync, add note, and then we can just pass in the state. So this is just an empty note. And this should be notes state get all, like that. I think is how I spelt it. Anyway. And now that should properly show us some of our stuff. Let's reset it again. Let's see. Give it a second. It seems to be lagging. Alrighty, so there is the error that I expected to see before with the list and the whole mapped list iterable, because the map function is changing that list into an iterable, and the column expects or not the column, but the list view expects a list of widgets. So we need to change this into our list of widgets. So I think we just add a to list here, like that. Should work, I think. Perhaps. Maybe. No. Why is this turning it into a string? Oh, okay. This needs to be a text widget. Forgot the title needs to have a widget in it, and then the two lists can go there. All right. So now we're getting issues because it's telling us that this doesn't have a type of widget. Let's see. I mean, this should be fine. I don't know why it's giving us an error. Let's try to reset it and see if that fixes it. It should be able to infer that the list tile is a widget, not a dynamic. Huh. Okay, well, that's really annoying. Let's try to fix it then. See what the problem is here. Oh, it's coming from the stream builder. Let's see. Let's go through this real quick. Let's put some types in here. So async snapshot of list of note. Have it properly infer that data type for us. And there we go. So that actually fixed it. So if sometimes when you get errors like that, type errors, you just have to kind of go backwards and you know, just kind of add some types so that the compiler can figure out what the hell you're trying to put in there. The list tile is a widget. That wasn't the problem. The problem was just that the compiler couldn't infer that it was a list of widgets, even though list tile is obviously a widget, because it didn't know what the async snapshot was, and it didn't know what the text was that I was trying to put in there. All right, so we've got our little test icon, so our not icon but text. Let's put some random text in here and see if it appears. And yes, indeed it does. So we've got the insert section of this already set up. Now let's add the update and delete stuff so that we can finish off this application. So, and actually that's going to be a little bit more complicated than what we've done thus far. So let's start to go through this. And by a little bit more complicated, I mean not that complicated. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and commit all this to GitHub so you guys can take a look. Let's see, basic insert is what I'll call it, and I'll push it to GitHub. And actually, let me put the GitHub repository back into the chat so that anybody who just came in after I originally put it in can actually go there. Alrighty, so what we're going to need to do for update is actually edit our model. So we want to make it so that the model is able to maintain a state, probably a Boolean type, so that it knows whether or not it's being edited, or, you know, and when it's being edited, what we're going to do is basically just take the list tile and, or not the list tile, but the text, and replace it with like a form field so that we can edit it. So back here in the model, we can just create a Boolean called editing, and then we can just add it to the constructor here. And do we need it in copy width? I don't really think we do. Let me think for a moment. Probably not. And we probably don't need to put it in the database either. So, you know, actually, let's put it in here. And it's just what we've done before. It's just a matter of adding it to this, following the patterns that we've already covered. So we'll call the key for this map edit. Let's just say editing, and then down here we'll just add a new string called editing, like that. And that seems about right to me. So that's really all we need to do for that. And now let's come over to our front end again and start to mess around with it. So first of all, I'm going to kind of center this stuff, make it look a little bit nicer. And then we'll start to build this logic properly. And perhaps I should change the names here, but you know, whatever. I'm going to go ahead and do that because this is really confusing, that the form tab is what's producing the list view, whereas the info tab is producing this other stuff. So let me just do this real quick, and then do this real quick. This should be all right, I'm hoping. Oh, there we go, yeah. So now I've flipped them back, and so I can just go back up here and flip them again. I want the info tab to be first, and then the form tab to be second. There we go. All right. So we're going to be doing most of this in the info tab. Okay, so first let's center all of this. So take this stream builder, wrap it in a center widget. And then actually we want to put this in a column. So let's children, like that. Oops. This needs to be in a list. Wrong parenthesis. There we go. And that's probably going to throw an error. Oh, no, it didn't. Okay. I'm actually surprised. Let's put this in a expandable though, just in case. Or expanded rather. So that it doesn't freak out because it's two vertical scrollable list things inside of a column. It's kind of going to potentially cause a problem. And then at the bottom here, we want to have a delete button. So I think below the stream builder, inside of the, not in the expanded, I don't think. So let's just put it in the column here. And we'll just have a material button. Oops. Child will be a text. And we'll just say delete all, like that. And then on pressed, it will be actually pretty simple. So just call set state. And then we're just going to call widget.block.inSync. Add. Pass in a note. And this note will just have note state delete all inside of it. So it's just an empty note. It's just passing back the state for us so that the application knows to delete everything. Let's see what that looks like. Wow, that's really strange. The circular progress bar is just kind of freaking out. So deleting it actually does delete everything, so that's fine. So it all works. Let's make this kind of look nice. So add some elevation, I guess. Say like 10.0, and then color, theme data let's say like dark. Oh, that's right, it's a named constructor. And then we want indicator color, and then we'll make it green. All right. And let's actually make the whole thing have a theme color of dark. I like the dark theme better than just the general theme of Flutter. Oh, there we go. That looks a lot nicer. Okay. And I think this column was perhaps... No, it wasn't. Alright, so that's fine the way it is. It's because our list view, we can't just... I mean, we could potentially pop the material button into the end of the list view, but it would just be a little annoying, actually. Alright, so we've got delete all, but we need delete button. So we want to put a delete button in our list tile. So, and actually before we do that, let's just do the editing thing. So what we want to do is just check to see if note.editing is true. I probably shouldn't have deleted this text thing. So check to see if it's true using just a ternary operator, so just a question mark. And then if it's true, we'll type in a text form field like this. Otherwise, we'll have our text like that. So then the text form field, it actually doesn't need a controller. We can just put the initial value in here, which will be our note.body. And then we can do an on field submitted, pass in the text, and just call set state widget.block.insync.add. And then we'll just pass in note.copyWidth. And this is actually getting pretty far out there, so let's save it like that. So we're going to use our copyWidth function to change the body to the new text. And then we'll change editing to not editing, so we'll just invert it. And this should be note.editing. And then the state. We're going to set this to notes state.update so that it calls the appropriate function and then updates the actual piece of text for us. And, you know, and actually that will not really do anything to our app for now. Like, we need to actually add some kind of gesture detector or a button so that it knows that it's being clicked. Let's do that real quick. How do I want to do this? I'm not sure how I want to do this. Well, while I'm thinking about that, let's just add the delete field here. So let's just add buttons to each of the list tiles, and these will be buttons that will delete those individual list tiles. So after the text here, we can add a trailing widget to the list tile, and we'll call it an icon button. Put an icon of icons.delete, and then on pressed, call set states, because of course we need to update the widget, and then widget.block.insync. And again, this is getting pretty far out in the horizontal, so let's put some commas in here. All right, so then we're going to do note copyWidth again. So we want to modify our note as it's being passed through to delete it. And we need to modify the ID, so note ID, and then we'll modify the state. So the reason we're modifying the ID is we're making sure that we have the appropriate ID, otherwise we might not delete the right note in the database. So let's see, what does that do for us? Let's add some items here. Come on, open up. And yeah, Boolean is coming back as null, which is fine. What do we've got to do? I think I need to add a default value in the model. What I need to do. So let's do that real quick. So let's set this by default to false, and then we'll reset this. And actually, resetting it's not going to fix it because we put in one without an editing field, so we need to delete them all, and then we can add a new one. That's not working. Oh, derp. This needs to be false as well. And it's actually not copy with where I want to put the default value. It's in the note constructor. Now let's put in the form after it loads again. If it'll let me. Oh, this is a pain. Let's try refreshing it again. All right, so Blake's left. Thanks for being here, by the way. I was thinking of doing Rust, but I know that a lot of the people on my channel are into Flutter, so I figured it would be good for a first live stream. As I do more live streams, obviously I'm going to do more and more subjects. Probably Rust, probably Elixir, and maybe some other languages that I haven't done tutorials on, maybe like Clojure and F# or Scala. Yeah, as I get more and more used to this, I'm going to start to allow people to pair program with me so that we can actually, you know, do some stuff that you guys really want to see. So I'm pretty excited about that. So that's really what this is all for. It's really just a test run for that. All right, so real quick, let's put this in. And there we go. We have our button. And if I click it, it deletes it. Ah, there we go. Nice. So now we just need the editing functionality. And that's not really that difficult. Just kind of hesitating on one little item of it, which I probably shouldn't be. And that's just how to handle changing it to an edited state. Really not that complicated. So I'm thinking that we just wrap the whole thing in a gesture detector of some kind. And then we have like an on-tab function. And I think that's all we have to do. So we just wrap the list tile in a gesture detector, and then this one here. Why is it being weird like that? I don't want to extract it. Just whatever. I'll just do it the old-fashioned way. All right, and I need to go all the way down here, find, let's put a comma here. All right, so now we can add There we go, gesture detector. Now we can just add an on tap down here. And we're not inside the gesture detector. On tap. And make this a multi-line function. So all we're going to do is just call set state. What am I doing? Widget.block.inSync.add note.copyWidth. And for this, we're just copying the editing, and then we're just going to change it. So editing is going to be note.editing negated, and then we also want to update the state. Note state update, like that. And we're going to need a semicolon. Let's see if this works now. There we go. All right, so it actually allows me to edit it. So let's type some stuff in here. And then when I submit it, it submits it. So let's see if it persists. So it does persist. All right, so it actually looks like we're done here. I mean, aside from adding some styling and stuff like that, we're really done with this application. So I think that was pretty successful. Decent live stream and decent amount of learning for this particular library. I'd say it's pretty good, especially as like a local cache for if you were going to make like an application that used like Firestore or Firebase, one of those JSON style databases. You could use Sembast to back up some of your data offline. So like maybe the phone doesn't connect online, you can still get the data. Like if you're able to do that, then I think it would be pretty useful in that regard. I haven't decided when the next live stream will be, but I'm thinking I might do another one this week before the weekend. So maybe tomorrow or maybe Friday, I'm not sure. And it'd be around this time at the night. So my time is I think it's 6:11 right now. So it'd be like 8 o'clock Eastern time, I think, something like that. So I think I started this an hour and a half ago, about 7:30 Eastern. Yeah, so Mr. Larry, this video will be on the channel when it's done. I believe they just upload it as a normal video. I'm not going to go back and edit it. I should have probably actually recorded it as I was streaming it. But again, this is like the first time I've ever live streamed, so I didn't really think about that. But yeah, I'm just going to leave it as is. So hopefully that won't be too annoying. I know there are a lot of moments where I had some brain farts, but if you watch it at 2 times speed, it should still be pretty useful to learning this particularly library. No, thank you, Mo, is it? I'm using OBS. OBS is pretty easy to do the streaming. All I really had to do was create a few streams, or not streams, but scenes, and then I was able to just hook in the proper API and it worked. Yeah, I actually just came across Sembast, or Bast is what it's called, not Blast. I keep saying Sembast because it seems more like what it should be called, but yeah. Came across it just recently and I figured, oh, that would be interesting to do. That actually was happening to me earlier. OBS, or not OBS, but YouTube was saying, oh, you've got bad quality. And then when I actually started the stream, it started streaming at 1080p. I don't know if it still is. But, yeah. I mean, in fact, I think on this stream, saying the health is good, but in the beginning it was saying it was bad. And okay, and going back and forth between that. Maybe you should just turn down the amount of byte rate that you're sending through. The lower the bit rate, probably the better it'll be. It should be 1080. I'm not sure if it's still there because, I mean, bandwidth could have dropped, but yeah, just try again. Just make like an unlisted stream and see if it works. All right, guys, well, I'm going to close out here probably. Let me just commit all this to GitHub so that you guys can take a look at it. Let's just call it final commit. Add all of it, and then, yeah, commit it, and then push it. And I gotta say, guys, thank you for being here for my first live stream. This was an interesting experience for sure. I actually did a tutorial on SQLite, and it wasn't specifically on SQLite, but one of my tutorials does have SQLite inside of it. It's the movie, what is it called? Let me go and find it for you. I actually pulled up the GitHub here. Yeah, movie searcher app. You can see here I've got a database in SQLite here. And it's actually very similar to what we just did. The only real difference here is the SQL, because you can see here I've got some actual SQL written in here. And then I'm using a lot of their functions too, which are, you don't actually have to write the SQL. So yeah, guys, thanks a lot. And I'll see you guys in the next tutorial or the next stream or whatever. And have a good night.